Padawans, how's it going? Mr. Medici coming at you. First, I want to say I'm sorry that I haven't been there this week or last week, you guys. I got sworn into jury duty, so I will be out a lot over the next 2 weeks, but I will be in class later this week and later next week. So I'll still get to see you guys this week. So we have finished our book. We have finished our memoir, Night, and now it comes time for our final assessment, which is going to take form in a critical analysis essay. So the purpose of this video is to do exactly what I would do with you guys if I was there. Right before we do an essay at the end or at the middle of a unit, we usually take a day or two and we go through our text or whatever literature that we're reading, and we compile all of our evidence and our analysis, and we create everything so that we're fully supported when we go to write our essays, right? So we're going to do the same thing today. Before we get started, make sure you have a copy of the book Night. You're going to want your cert pens, something to write with like a pencil, and you're also going to want to get out all of those discussion questions and quick writes and all the class work assignments that we've done over the last 3 or 4 weeks or so. You're going to want to get all of that stuff, because all of this is going to help you craft your essay and help you as we fill out this graphic organizer. Let's just jump right into it. Let's get started. By now, we should have finished the memoir, Night, that we've been reading over the last few weeks. Last Friday, we should have all read pages 103 to 115 and read the ending of the book, where we finally see, well, actually, I won't spoil it because I know some of you may not have finished the book. So if you haven't finished the book, I actually would pause this video and I would go grab a copy of the book under the screen in the milk crate, and I would make sure to read pages 103 to 115 before you do this, this activity that we have here. So now that we're at the end, now it comes time for our final assessment, which is going to be a critical analysis essay. And before we go into essay writing, I created this little tool right here for us to do together in preparation for this essay. You know that before every single essay, we always, take a day and we go through our text, our literature, whatever it is we're reading, and we focus on making claims, we focus on finding evidence, and then using our brains to, create analysis statements about how our evidence supports our claims. Okay, so that's exactly what we're going to do today. Sorry that I'm not there to do this with you guys, but as long as you follow along and, keep up with this video, you should be in a good position to write the essay. Okay, so you also actually should have a copy of the essay in front of you, but make sure not to start it just yet. I just want it there so that you guys can see the prompt as we work through this activity here. So let's just jump right into it. So let's read the instructions first. I'm going to start right up here at the top. So now that we've read Chapter 8 and the conclusion of Eli's experience during the Holocaust in Chapter 9, the time comes to show your literary expertise. Eli and his fellow Jewish people experienced absolute horror during the 1940s as the Nazis slowly stripped them of their humanity. This process is known as dehumanization and will be the focal point of your analysis for this final essay. Let's jump back into previous chapters and build our analysis together. Okay, so you guys know how our search structure goes. We have claim, evidence, reasoning, evidence, reasoning. This essay, like always, is going to be a 1x2 cert essay. Okay, so remember, claim, evidence, reasoning, transition. Stick around at the end of this activity. I'm going to take a few minutes and I'm going to go right back through the cert and MLA structure, just so you can have a quick review of how to structure your essay again. So let's just jump right into it. So this first page here is going to kind of reflect our first body paragraph, just like we do it when I'm there. So we're going to start with the claim, just like we always do, okay? So we're going to start in this box here. So make sure to have your green pen or pencil, whatever it is that you're using. And, before we get started in this, let's go ahead and hop into our book. Make sure you have a copy of the book before we get started. If you need to pause the video right now and grab yourself a book, go ahead and do that. Okay, so in the beginning, what kind of character is Eli? Okay, before we even hop into the story, what kind of character is he? Now, remember, when we read the beginning, we found out that, Eli is very spiritual and wants to be close to his God. He's always in the synagogue, he's always studying the scriptures. It even says it right here on page 3, right? He says, let's see, right here. He says, by day I studied the Talmud, by night I would run to the synagogue to weep over the destruction of the temple. Okay, he says he was 13 and deeply observant. Okay, so we see Eli, he's very, very committed to his religion, to his scriptures. Remember, he meets Moshe the beetle, who became kind of his, like, religious and spiritual mentor. Remember, he says here, thus began my initiation. Together we would read over and over again the same page of the Zohar, not to learn it by heart, right? Eli wanted to think a little bit deeper. He wanted to discover the very essence of divinity. So we see that he was a very devoted individual. And this was the time of his life where he was kind of coming out of childhood a little bit and kind of figuring out his, belief and his passions and everything. So this was kind of a crucial time for him in his life. So with all of that said, how can we find an example of where dehumanization starts? And what I want to do is, in your books, remember, go ahead, we should all have a copy of the book. I want to go to page 11. Okay, I want to go to page 11. Now, page 11 kind of skips forward a bit, and remember, they had started moving the Jewish people into the ghetto communities where they would all be smushed in there like sardines, and they kind of started separating them from all the other civilians of Seged, and they were kind of keeping them in these ghettos, right? So that's, before we even look at the textual evidence, I kind of want to touch on that with my claim. So I'm going to switch to a green pen, and I'm going to make a claim kind of reflecting those beginning aspects of dehumanization, kind of the separation from the rest of society, right? So we can say something like, Eli first experiences dehumanization when he and his family are separated from society. Okay. Separated from society. Okay. Now remember, we need to find two pieces of evidence that support this claim. So does anybody remember on page 11, there's a really good example of this, the beginning of this separation for the Jewish community. So if we go to page 11, remember what they did when they had them move into this ghetto? They started issuing all these decrees. They couldn't have jewelry. They couldn't be out past a certain time. Remember? And then one of those decrees was 3 days later, every Jew, a new decree, every Jew had to wear the yellow star of David, right? The yellow star, so what? It's not lethal. And then here's kind of Eli's reaction right here. So this is a really good piece of evidence of kind of that separation from society. So I want to use that piece of evidence there. So this is on page 11, right? So let's go back to our tool here, and we're going to switch over to our blue color. Okay, and let's go ahead and put that one here in the right. So we have page 11 states. And then what does page 11 state again? Let's go ahead and go back to it. It says, 3 days later, a new decree. Every Jew had to wear the yellow star. Let's go ahead and get that into our tool. 3 days later, a new decree. Am I spelling that right? Let me make sure. Am I brain farting right now? No, I am spelling that right. Every Jew had to wear the yellow star. Every Jew had to wear the yellow star, right? That's a really good piece of evidence that we can use there. There's also a lot of other pieces of evidence that goes to show in the first 2 or so chapters, I think up to page 30 or about page 30. There's a lot of other different examples here. Remember, this is just something that I'm going to use. And remember, if you choose to use exactly what it is we're writing on the tool here, remember the highest score you can get is going to be a 2.5 to a 3. Okay? So remember, if you want to shoot for that 4, you're going to have to find all your own textual evidence and reasoning, and kind of you can just use this assignment as a guide to guide your analysis. Okay, so now let's get to our reasoning here. I'm not going to really write out a reasoning statement because this is supposed to be your analysis, right? But I can kind of help guide you. So what is the effect that this has on Ellie, long-term and or short-term? Okay, let's go back to the text. And Eli, excuse me, not Ellie, Eli kind of has a reaction right here, actually. He says, "Poor father, of what then did you die?" What do you guys think he means when he says here? Poor father, of what then did you die? He's kind of realizing that something happened or is happening to his dad right here, right? This is kind of the first time that we're seeing Eli kind of question his dad's resolve, right? So that's one thing you could touch on your analysis here. Okay, I'm just going to kind of make some bullet points here. I'm not going to write out a whole statement. I'm going to leave that for you guys to do. So Eli starts questioning his father's resolve, right? Starts kind of questioning his father's resolve. What's another effect? What's maybe something else we can touch on? Let's see. If we go back to the text, look what he says here. My father's view was that it was not all bleak, or perhaps he just did not want to discourage the others, to throw salt on their wounds. Maybe this is kind of confusing Eli a bit because, his father has always been kind of unsentimental, always kind of been distant. Okay, so maybe this confuses him. Maybe it confuses him pertaining to his reactions. Right? These are things that we could touch on here. Okay? So why don't we find another piece of textual evidence that shows another, that can support our claim here. Another piece of evidence that supports our claim right here, saying that Eli first experiences dehumanization when he and his family are separated from society. Let's go ahead and find another piece of evidence for that one. Okay, make sure to pause the video on these. I know I'm probably moving a bit fast, but just pause anytime you need to catch up. Okay, and remember, these reasoning statements are yours to craft. These are yours to craft. These are just a couple of things that you might want to touch on in your reasoning statement, or you can touch on something else. It's up to you. Okay, let's find another piece of evidence here. So let's go back to our text. Okay, here we have, look what it says here. This is actually a really, we got pretty lucky. We landed on this right here because here's where we first get to see them being actually separated into the ghettos and being marched from one ghetto to the next, right? We know it's not just one ghetto that they were in. So look what it says. It says, then came the ghettos. 2 ghettos were created in Saget. A large one in the center of town, and then another smaller one. Okay. In the first ghetto, it says they got to remain in their house and everything, but we see that this is kind of the first physical separation that they get. And if we take it actually to page 19, by this point, They had already been moved a couple different ghettos. They had already been kicked out of their house. And look at the effect that it kind of has on him here. That was when I began to hate them. Oops. That was when I began to hate them. My hatred remains our only link to this day, right? You see them saying here, forward, march. My father is crying. They're moving them out of the ghetto. They're getting ready to go into the train. So back here on page 11, we kind of see the beginning of the physical separation. And then on page 19, we have evidence of, the ultimate effect that all of this is happening, the ultimate effect that it has on Eli because of all of this is happening. So why don't we I think I would use what we see here on page 11 as our piece of textual evidence for this first body paragraph, right? So I'm going to switch over to blue. Okay, and we have page 11. Okay, then came the ghettos. Right? Okay, we have another piece of textual evidence of them being moved back and forth between the ghettos, right? If we go all the way down to page 19. And in between here, in between page 11 and page 19, there's a ton of other good evidence options. Now remember, you can look for your own pieces of evidence and create your own reasoning statements if you want to shoot for that 4, okay? These are just a couple of things that I'm going to touch on as we work through this activity together, right? So we see here, this is the last time it was spent in their home. Remember, they were being moved to that second ghetto. Faster, move, you lazy good-for-nothings, the Hungarian police were screaming, right? And then look what it says then. That was when I began to hate them. Okay, so I actually want to cite page 18 here. So let's go back to our tool. We have another really good piece of evidence here. I'm going to go back to my blue color. Oops. So we have page 18. That was the last night. That was the last night we spent in our home, right? Okay, we kind of see the process of this dehumanization. This is just the beginning too, right? I mean, out of all the things we read in this book, we know that this is just the beginning. And then we have a final piece of evidence here on page 19. That was when I began to hate them. Right? We slowly start to see Eli's innocence and his childhood begin to fade away here, right? This was like the first example of seeing Eli's childhood and innocence start to go away. And it was because of this dehumanization process, right? That was when I began to hate them, right? So we have three really good pieces of evidence here for this one. I mean, you can use one, you can use all, you can use two. I mean, I think all of this evidence right here really, really helps support the claim that we made, right? And then just like the first reasoning statement, I kind of want to leave this one for you guys. But I mean, I'm going to write a few things down to kind of help joggle your thinking. So what was the effect that this had on Eli, right? What was the effect of, having to, not having to wear the star, but, having being moved to this ghetto, physically being separated from the rest of society, spending that last night, being aware that that was the last night that he spent in his house. Then we see his hatred develop, right? So, we see Eli leaving his home. We see Eli leaving his home. Making him sad or confused, maybe. Okay. We have Eli's hatred beginning to develop, right? We have his hatred. We also have Eli's loss of innocence in childhood here. This is the first example of Eli's loss of innocence. I mean, what does a 12-year-old child know about true hatred, you know? But this was something that he was beginning to experience. So here we have kind of our first body paragraph here. We have it all kind of outlined. And remember, we want to go claim, evidence, reasoning, evidence, reasoning. And I'm going to go ahead and number this in red. Go ahead and number this with me if you need help remembering. Remember, it's going to go claim first. Oops. It's going to go claim first. And then your first piece of evidence. And then your reasoning. And then another piece of evidence, which is going to be number 4. And then lastly, your reasoning, followed by your transition. Okay. Transition, which is number 6. Okay. So there's our first paragraph. I'm gonna go ahead and do the second paragraph now. So pause the video right here if you need to catch up with all of this. If not, let's move right along. Moving right along. Okay, so let's go ahead and switch to our green because now we want to make another claim, right? So now we're on body paragraph 2. We want to make another claim talking about an example of dehumanization for Eli and his family. One of the key lessons that I want to use for this one is actually going to be lesson 5. So if you have your lesson 5 discussion questions, we have a lot of really good evidence and questions that we've already answered that could really help us with this body paragraph. So pause the video, make sure you have lesson 5. Okay, let's go ahead and make another claim. Now this is where the book starts to get it starts to get a little dark, right? Remember, so this is past the train. And now remember, you can totally talk about the train and remember Madame Shosters and her visions of fire and the conditions that were on the train. These are all perfect examples that you can use if you want to shoot for that 4. But I'm going to take it to lesson 5 right when they get to the first camp, Auschwitz, right? So let's make a claim. Now, does anybody remember what they experienced when they get off the train at Auschwitz? There was like some sort of selection process. Anybody remember what happened there? Remember? And her mom, or Eli's mom and sister Zipporah, got separated from them and got sent to the crematory. I mean, so much happened in this part. So let's make another claim here. Okay, right here in this box. So Eli experiences dehumanization when he arrives at Auschwitz. Okay, remember our claim just needs to be concise and to the point, and then we can really break it down in the rest of the paragraph. So let's get that claim in here. Eli, or you know what? I'm going to say Eli further experiences dehumanization when he and his family reach the first camp Auschwitz. I might have spelled that wrong, but pretty sure that's how it's spelled. All right. So, he further experiences dehumanization when he and his family reach Auschwitz. We keep it open like that because a lot happens when they first get to Auschwitz, right? We want to go ahead and we want to focus on 2 specific things that we can find evidence for when talking about how him and his family first get to Auschwitz, right? So if you look at lesson 5, that's a reason why we do these discussion questions because you have the page and the evidence and you have your analysis already done. So it makes these essays a little bit easier when you have all this stuff. So first of all, what happens to Eli when he was going to the first selection? First of all, if you look at question 2 on lesson 5 discussion question, it says, what does Eli plan to do if he and his father are selected to go to the crematory, right? So Eli knows he's coming to this like major selection. He can smell the flesh burning. He can see the smoke and the fire. We know that he sees other things that we won't talk about in this activity, but he knows he's about to go to a selection. What does he plan to do? Remember, he's 12 years old. What does he plan to do before he even gets to the selection, or if he and his father get selected to the crematory? I want to turn your attention to page 34 because that's where we're going to see what happens here, right? We said it was on page 34 on the discussion questions, but it's up here. Look what Eli does. Now, this is right after he sees, I won't repeat it, but when he sees what's being thrown into the crematory with his own eyes, this is after his mom and Zipporah go off and, fail the selection and have to be sent to the crematory. And now him and his dad are now coming up to a selection. And what does he say? Look what he says right here. He says, Father, let's actually look what the father says first. He says, the world is not interested in us. Today, everything is possible. Even the crematoria. His voice broke. Eli's a 12-year-old boy experiencing this, and look what his response is. Father, if that is true, then I don't want to wait. I'll run into the electrified barbed wire. That would be easier than a slow death in the flames. Poor baby. Okay? A 12-year-old boy is so distraught by what he's seeing that he makes the decision to kill himself. Okay? Because it would be easier than what awaits him. Okay? This is heavy stuff here. So I think this is a good piece of evidence that we could use for our first textual evidence of our second body paragraph, right? When, one of the first thoughts and experiences that Eli experiences when he gets to Auschwitz is suicide. What 12-year-old boy should be having to experience something like that? So let's go back to our blue color. And that was on page 33. So we have page 33 states. Okay. Now let's go ahead and pick something out of page 33 right here. Look what he says. Father, if that's true, then I don't want to wait. I'll run into the electrified barbed wire. That would be easier than a slow death in the flames. Okay, so let's paraphrase that a little bit. I'm going to start actually with I'll run into the electrified barbed wire. Let's go ahead and get that into our tool. So I'm going to start it with a ... I'll run into the electrified barbed wire. Remember, I'm going to paraphrase, so I'm going to hit it with another ... Let's go back to our text. And that would be easier than a slow death in the flames. Okay, actually that's the next sentence over, so I don't even think we need these 3 dots here. Okay. That would be easier than a slow death in the flames. Okay, really good piece of evidence right here, right? So pause the video here if you need to catch up on writing this piece of evidence down. Now we want to look at the effect that this has on Eli, right? What effect does this have on him? And this takes us to one of my favorite quotes in the book. If we go back to the book, right after this, at the end of this chapter, this is one of the most powerful sections of the book right here. Never shall I forget that night, the first night in the camp that turned my life into one long night, 7 times sealed. Never shall I forget the smoke, the small faces of the children whose bodies I saw transformed into smoke, those flames that consumed my faith forever, the nocturnal silence that deprived me for all eternity of the desire to live, those moments that murdered my God and my soul and turned my dreams to ashes. Never shall I forget. Okay, this is a powerful quote of the book right here, and I think this can really help us with our analysis statement. I want you guys to take what you read here. Okay, ooh, I don't like that. Let me do that again. Take what you read here, and I want you to put this into your own words for our analysis statement. Put this into your own words. This right here is showing the short-term and the long-term effect of this first night in Auschwitz and what Eli experienced, okay? So remember, this is on page 34. I want you to take this little quote right here, and that's what I want you to use for this reasoning statement right here, okay? So I'm just going to write here, take quote from page 34, put into own words. Okay? And that's kind of what I want you to do there. Okay? It's kind of what I want you to do there for that one. Now, let's look at another piece of textual evidence about what happens to them. How do they experience dehumanization when they get to the first camp, Auschwitz? Because remember, we're still focused on this claim here and how we're going to support it. Okay, and for that one, I want to take your attentions to page, I believe, 36. Yeah, 30. Actually, 35. Let me see. Yes, page 35. Look what it says here. So after this horrific, introduction to Auschwitz and all these things and everything we just touched on for the first half of this second body paragraph, what's the next thing that happens? Well, they have to go to the barber. So remember, Eli and his father, they passed the first selection, right? So the next thing was they head to the barracks, and the first thing waiting for them was a barber, okay? Look what he says here. Belt and shoes in hand, I let myself be dragged along to the barbers. Their clippers tore out our hair, shaved every hair on our bodies. My head was buzzing, the same thought surfacing over and over again, not to be separated from my barber. So we have this experience that Eli is having, when he gets to the barracks and, they completely shaved their whole bodies. And Eli says something, glanced over at my father, how changed he looked. His eyes were veiled. I wanted to tell him something, but I didn't know what. Okay? Look at that. Look what he says right down here as well. The morning star shone in the sky. I too had become a different person, right? All of these dehumanizing things he's experiencing, of course he's becoming a different person. The student of the Talmud, the child I was, had been consumed by flames. All that was left was a shape that resembled me, so like a shadow. My soul had been invaded and devoured by a black flame. Okay, so here's the effect of, the next kind of stage, the next stage of events that happened here, right? So we have some really good textual evidence here on page 35 and 37. Let's go ahead and get that into our tool. Let's get that into our tool here. So I'm going to go to my blue page, and I first want to cite page 35. Page 35 states, this is where we're going to touch on them being shaved, when they went to go see the barbers. Their clippers tore out our hair, shaved every hair on our bodies. Let's get that in. Their clippers. Ooh, I already forgot what it said. Let's go back. Their clippers tore out our hair, shaved every hair on our bodies. Their clippers tore off our hair. Shaved every hair on our bodies, right? What's his reaction? If we go to page 37, when he says he looked at his father, right? He says, I looked at my father and how changed he looked. His eyes were veiled. I want to write that actually. That's a really good piece of evidence here. Page 37 states, I looked at my father. How changed he looked. His eyes were veiled. His eyes were veiled, right? Kind of getting that reaction from Eli when he's seeing his dad. Page 37 also states, right? We have a lot of good evidence for this one. Page 37 also states, the student of the Talmud, the child I was, had been consumed by the flames. My soul had been invaded, devoured by a black flame. I would paraphrase. I would take something out of this. There's a lot of good stuff in this little section right here, but I would take one of these out of here. I'm going to use actually this last part right here. My soul had been invaded and devoured by a black flame. I'm going to write that down. Last one. My soul had been invaded, devoured by a black flame, right? Okay, so here's some really good evidence, right? Wow, we got a lot of evidence in this box here. So what I want you to do, I'm kind of going to do the same thing that I had you do over here. Remember, the reasoning statements need to be your own. So I think a really good way that you could tackle this and explain how all of these things that we just wrote down help to support the claim, what I think Eli kind of already touches on the effect that it has on him right here, right? This is kind of the long-term effect that he had. So just like we did with the other one, this paragraph right here, I want you to put this one in your own words. I want you to put that in your own words, okay? That's on page 37. All right, so I'm going to, actually, what paragraph is that? Let's see. This paragraph, page 37, paragraph 3. So I'm just going to write that in this box here. I'm going to say page 37, paragraph 3, put into your own words. Okay, and that kind of should help guide your thinking here, and touch on what happened, with his soul. What does he say there? What does he mean? How is Eli now compared to before all this happened? Compared to before the war. Okay? This could kind of help guide your thinking on your analysis statement there, but really, I want you to focus on that third paragraph of page 37. Look at that long-term effect that it has on Eli, and I want you to put that into your own words. These two should be quite similar. Okay, and that's okay. That's okay. We can practice, restating similar ideas. And it all goes in one paragraph. It all aligns with kind of the theme of this paragraph here when we talk about his how he feels and what the effect was when he first arrives to the camp, how he was dehumanized when he first arrives to the camp. Okay, so there goes our second body paragraph. Go ahead and pause the video now if you need to, kind of catch up with everything. I know we got a lot written down on this. So pause the video now because we're going to go ahead and work on the last body paragraph. Okay, let's move on. So here we are with the last body paragraph. And now there's so many things that we can touch on, right? We can touch on, when they were marching from Auschwitz to Camp Buna or to Camp Birkenau, and Eli seeing the soldiers, flirt with the girls and having their happy reaction while he sees, his people marching in the cold. We can touch on, Juliek beating Eli's father when he asks to use the restroom. I mean, there's so many other things we can touch on, but I think I want to touch on the hanging of the Pipal for this last body paragraph. I think this was a really powerful paragraph. This was going to be lesson 8. So if you need to pause the video now and make sure you have your discussion questions in Quick Write from lesson 8, that's really going to help you out with this one. Okay, so let's just go ahead and jump right into it. So let's make a claim for this third body paragraph. Okay, with our green pens. Okay, and we want to touch on, I don't know if you guys remember, the hanging of the Pipal was a really powerful scene in this book. A lot of little things happen in here that we can really break down, but we're going to focus in on the dehumanization effect of this, right? And you can even touch on the dehumanization of not only Eli, but also the Nazi soldiers that carried out the hanging. I mean, you're totally free to talk about that as well. We might even touch on that one in this video. So let's make a claim first. So we'll say, again, Eli experiences horrific spelling that wrong. Dehumanization when witnessing the hanging of the Pipal. Okay, now remember, this is a really, really heavy scene where Eli and his dad and his people are forced to witness these public executions, one of them being a really young boy. So, and a lot of different things happen. It happens quick. There's only maybe like a page and a half that touches on the hanging of the Pipal, but there's a lot that happens in those couple of pages, and enough for us to make a whole body paragraph out of, I think. Now, remember, if you want to shoot for that 4, you're going to find something else to touch on. Find another example of dehumanization. It's literally, there's unlimited examples in this book. Okay. So let's jump right in. Let's go ahead and find a piece of textual evidence for the hanging of the Pipal. So if we go back to our text, I believe the hanging of the Pipal happens in the 60s. Let's see. Yes. This is definitely where the hanging of the Pipal happens. So let's talk about this. So they come and they have to witness these public hangings, and they're usually grown adults, but something was different about this one. Eli notices that it's a really small child, right? And so let's kind of zone in on where he talks about this. Look what he says here. The SS seemed more preoccupied, more worried than usual. To hang a child in front of thousands of onlookers was not a small matter. All eyes were on the child. He was pale, almost calm, but he was biting his lips as he stood in the shadow of the gallows. Right? Okay. So let's go ahead and take some textual evidence here. I really like when he says here. Let's see. The SS surrounding us, machine guns aimed at us, the usual ritual. Among them, little Pipel, the sad-eyed angel. Okay, to hang a child in front of thousands of onlookers was not a small matter, right? Let's go ahead and cite some of this. I think I'm gonna focus on just this piece right here. To hang a child in front of thousands of onlookers was not a small matter. This is page 64. So let's go back to our tool. Make sure we have our blue color here. So we have page 64 states. Okay. Ooh, what did it say? I already forgot. To hang a child in front of thousands of onlookers was not a small matter. To hang a child in front of thousands of onlookers was no small matter, right? Let's see if we can find something else. We got that one there. Let's go back. Let's see if we can find something else here. Look what happens here when he says the third rope was still moving, the child too light was still breathing, and so he remained for more than half an hour. Really, really heavy stuff right here, guys, but this absolutely supports our claim of how Eli experiences this dehumanization wreathing before our eyes. I mean, the mental image that this creates is just disheartening, right? So this is page 65. Let's go ahead and quote something. Let's go ahead and quote something out of here for page 65. Let's go back here. So we're going to say page 65 states, okay, but the third rope was still moving. The child was still breathing. I'm going to paraphrase that a little bit. But the third rope was still moving. ... I'm going to paraphrase. The child was still breathing. The child was still breathing. Okay, heavy stuff here. Okay. Again, Eli actually speaks on the effect that it had on him. You know, he said, after they were forced to look at this still alive child, he heard someone behind him saying, "For God's sake, where is God?" And then, Eli answers the question himself. He says, "And from within me, I heard a voice answer, 'Where is he?'" This is where? Hanging from this gallows. Oof. Okay? So this is an important scene because here we see the final, the ultimate death of Eli's faith and religion in God. It's right here at the end of chapter 4 when he witnesses this horrific sight where finally his faith in God is concrete, is dead. I know he touches on it a little bit, but I feel like this is really, really where his faith dies when he has to view this. So, I think I actually want to cite this. I'm going to say page 67. I'm going to write one more piece of evidence in here. This is all really good stuff. So we have, page 67 states, This is where. Hanging from the gallows. Okay, another really good piece of evidence here. So when it comes to our reasoning statement, the effect that it has on Eli, he kind of already explains what effect it has on him right here, right? So kind of in the same lines as the reasoning statements of paragraph 2, I want you to kind of explain this to me. Explain the importance of this statement here. Okay? I want you to put that in your own words, but not just put it into your own words, but I want you to explain the importance of this. Okay? And not just that, but how does that reflect the loss of Eli's childhood and his innocence? That's kind of what I want. That's kind of where I want you to go for this reasoning statement here, right? So explain the importance of that quote on page 67. Explain the importance of the quote on page 67, right? That would be that quote right there, the very last one. Okay? And then if you want to take it a bit deeper, you can explain how this represents the loss of his innocence in childhood. Explain how this represents the loss of his innocence in childhood. Okay? That's kind of what I want you to touch on for this one. This one, this piece of evidence here, this whole hanging of the Pipal, it's really heavy stuff, and I'd really like to hear your thoughts on this. I want you to hear why this quote. I want to hear why you think this quote is significant. I want to hear how this represents the loss of his innocence and of his childhood, right? If you have your Lesson 8 discussion questions, we kind of already touched on this, and you can totally use your notes to help you craft up your answer here. Okay? Why don't we go ahead and look at our last piece of textual evidence? And, there's so many ways that I can, there's so many different ways we can take the hanging of the Pipal, but I think I want to focus on the dehumanization of not just Eli, but, Eli notices something right before the child is hung. He notices that, the lager kapos or the ober kapos, the Jewish, the Jewish prisoners that are selected as kind of the head of the groups or the barracks, they didn't want to carry out the hanging of the Pipal. It was the Jewish officers that had to kind of come and carry this out, right? And that's who I want to reflect on. Those officers, how does the hanging of the Pipal reflect, dehumanization for them, even though they don't even realize it's happening, right? So that's going to take us back into our text one final time, okay? And I think it's on page 64 here. Yes, here it is. Look what it says. This time, the Lager Capo refused to act as executioners. 3 SS took his place. Okay? That's just that one sentence there. That's just that one sentence. Before we even try to break that down, let's get that into our tool as our piece of textual evidence for this third body paragraph. Okay, so we have, what page was that? Was that page 66, I think? 64, actually. Okay, so we have page 64 that states, this time Dagger Capo refused to act as executioner. What does it say? 3 SS took their place? 3 SS took his place. 3 SS took his place. Okay, I think that's the only textual evidence that I want to put for this one. That's the only one. Because it's a quick observation that Eli has before the hanging of the pipal. And what I want you to focus on for your analysis statement is how does this reflect the dehumanization of the SS officers, the Nazi officers? Right? And Eli is also witnessing this, okay? He's experiencing this himself. This may not be, happening to, Eli himself. I mean, it's happening to him in the moment, but, we can also look at other people that are around Eli and just see how this whole process is dehumanizing for everyone involved, right? So how does this reflect the dehumanization of the or of the German officers, right? How does this reflect the dehumanization? And we touched on this one in discussion questions from lesson 8. And I believe this was question 3. Okay, so refer to your discussion questions there to kind of help you answer this question here, to kind of help guide your reasoning statement. Okay, so there we have it. We have all 3 body paragraphs written out, outlined out, ready to go. Okay, just follow along. And I numbered these ones here, 1, 2, 3. Just follow that same structure for these. Actually, no, I'm going to go ahead and write them in while we are together. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then the same thing for body paragraph number 3. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay? All right. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll through each one of these and pause for about a second, just in case you need to pause and get caught up. So here we have our first page. Go ahead and pause if you need that one now. Okay, then we have our second page, or for our second body paragraph. Pause if you need this one. And then last but not least, we have our third page reflecting our third body paragraph. Pause if you need this one. Okay, so there you have it, Padawans. Stick around. We're going to go over CERT and MLA structure next. Hey again, Padawans. So we got done writing out and filling out our whole graphic organizer. We have all of our information all neatly organized, ready for us to write. But I want to go over really quick again what the CERT structure is. Ooh, let me make this a little bit thicker. I want to go over again CERT structure, CERT writing. Okay, so remember, we always want to start with our introduction paragraphs, right? And our introduction is always going to start with our hook, which is in pink. Okay, and remember, our hook is going to catch the reader's attention. Okay, remember, you want to have something that catches the reader's attention, and that could be a quote from the book. Oops. That could be a quote from the book. It could be a fact, like a fun fact. It could be a question. It could be a thought. Anything that you feel is going to help you catch the reader's attention for your essay, okay? And remember, the hook only needs to be a 1 sentence long. Okay? Just 1 sentence for our hook. And then remember, the next part of our introduction paragraph is going to be our background information. Our background info. Okay? And the background info for this essay could look like a couple of different things, right? It could look like who is Elie Wiesel? Who is the author of our book? Who is he? Right? What was the Holocaust? What was the Holocaust? Maybe give some information on World War II. What was World War II? Okay. What awards did Elie receive for his memoir? Okay, right? Remember we talked about some of the things that he was awarded after this book? Excuse me, after writing this book. Okay. Maybe a quick summary about the memoir. Maybe just giving your reader a quick broad stroke about what our memoir is about. And then remember, our background information needs to at least be 2 to 3 sentences. Has to be 2 to 3 sentences. Okay? And then remember, after background information, then we're going to create our thesis statement. Okay, remember our thesis statement. And the thesis statement tells the reader exactly what the essay is going to be about. Okay, so it tells the reader exactly what the essay is about. Okay, and now remember, the essay prompt that you have is this. Analyze the various ways in which Nazis dehumanized the Jewish prisoners in the ghettos and the concentration camps throughout the memoir. What are the effects, long-term and or short-term, that this has on Elie? Okay, remember, you want to restate the prompt in your thesis. Restate the prompt. Okay, use the language from the prompt, because the prompt is telling you exactly what you're going to be analyzing, and your thesis statement tells the reader exactly what your essay is going to be about. So to make it easy on yourself, just use the prompt. Okay, a quick example of that would be something like, this essay will analyze, and then here is where you want to use the language of the prompt. Okay, this essay will analyze the various ways in which the Nazis dehumanized the Jewish prisoners throughout the memoir. Okay, see how I just took this little sentence stem here? This essay will analyze, and then I just used the language of the prompt. Makes it really, really simple when you do it that way. Okay, so that's our introduction paragraph. Now we want to move on to our body paragraphs. Okay, and we just did the tool, so I'm not going to touch too much on the body paragraphs, because we just outlined everything. But remember, they need to start with a claim. Then you need to provide evidence to support that claim. You need to provide a reasoning statement or your own analysis on how that evidence supports that claim. Then you need to provide me with a second piece of evidence that supports that claim, as well as a second reasoning or analysis statement that shows how your evidence supports your claim. And then, just like we always do, we want to end it off with a transition and what you're going to touch on in your next body paragraph. And some of those things, some transitions can start off like, although, right? Although 1, 2, 3. Okay, another example could be something like, although or even such Or let's see, how else could you write like a good transition? As seen, or as analyzed. Get creative with it. These are just kind of some starters that you can use for your transition statement. Remember, you're kind of just reviewing what you touched on in the paragraph, and you're setting your reader up for your next paragraph, okay? And then remember, you need 3 body paragraphs. 3, okay? Follow the outline that we just did together. And then last but not least, we have our conclusion paragraph. Okay, and the conclusion is pretty easy. I mean, it's kind of the same. Actually, let me move that up a little bit so I don't use 2 pages here. So we'll write it here. Then we have our conclusion paragraph. And the conclusion paragraph always starts first with restating your thesis. Okay, remember to go back up, look at what your thesis statement says, and you're just basically going to restate that in your conclusion paragraph. This essay has analyzed okay, and then again, you want to use the language of the prompt. If your thesis statement in your introduction says this essay will analyze the various ways in which the Nazis dehumanized the prisoners in the ghettos and the camps throughout the memoir, for your restating of the thesis in your conclusion, this essay has analyzed the various ways in which, etc., etc. Okay, so remember, restate your thesis there. You're also going to want to give me next. After that, you're going to restate all main points. Restate all main points or thoughts or analysis. Those reasoning statements in there, those textual evidence quotes that you have in there. You want to restate that. You kind of want to summarize everything that you touched on in about 2 to 3 sentences. Okay, and that can include quotes, that can include your own individual analysis or thoughts. Okay, and then last but not least, we have our clincher. Okay, our clincher. What are you going to leave the reader to think about? What are you going to, what are you going to leave the reader to think about? Okay, you got to really just get creative with your clincher. I've seen some really, really good ones in previous essays. I've seen really good clinchers and hooks, and yeah, you're just gonna have to get creative. So I'm gonna zoom out if you want to take a picture of this, but I'm also going to download this as a PDF, and I will upload this entire sheet to Google Classroom so that you can have this to reference as you write your essay. Okay, so use this sheet, use your discussion questions, use the tool that we just finished, have a copy of the book ready, and with all of these things ready to go, now you are ready to start your essay. Take your time. You have the next couple of days to write this. Take your time. This is going to be graded as a full test. Okay? Remember, I'm still available through email. If you have any questions, just shoot me an email and I will try my best to answer you. But just remember that I will be in court over the next couple of weeks. So I may not be quick to respond in the daytime, but I will try my best. Okay, good luck with your essay, and I'll be looking out for any questions you guys might have. And I will see you guys very, very soon.